What's up, everybody? Welcome back. And this is not a review. I'm probably going to lose another subscriber. Last time I posted something that wasn't a review, I lost a subscriber. But I wanted to talk about audio description. It's literally why I'm here. Um, I also was recently asked a question by somebody working in the audio description community about what are the things that if I could change, if I could improve audio description, what would they be for specifically for the movie theater going experience? Because I have a lot of thoughts about streaming. So I have to take that out. I have to take all my feelings for all the streaming services out and think about just the movie theater going experience. Now, uniquely, I also worked in movie theaters for over 10 years. I worked for 4 different chains, 5 different movie theaters, and I made it all the way to manager level. So I've been all over the place. I've been trained in every aspect of the theater, usher, concession, box office, projection, manager. It's just all over. I know how to do everything. I've done it in a while, and I've never done it blind, but um, I still feel like I could thread a movie today if I needed to. Um, yeah, and it, the thing about improving uh, audio description is, at least for me, I don't know how prevalent audio description. I didn't really, when you're not blind, you don't pay attention to it, and I don't know at what point audio description really started becoming prevalent, because all I know is that it wasn't until my last theater, which I started working in 2006, that I noticed audio description existed. And suddenly we had these little boxes to give out to people when they asked for them. And that was it. I mean, I was never really trained on anything, and nobody really was. There was nobody there that ever knew anything about the boxes. If the boxes didn't work, we had other boxes, but at some point, either if none of the boxes worked, none of the boxes worked. Um, we could see whether or not the battery worked, whether or not they were, good to go that way, or that was pretty much it. I mean, I know how to like turn them on and off, um, but I didn't really know how to troubleshoot the system. Uh, my best my best answer would be to try to radio to a projectionist and let them know that, hey, the system's not working. Can you? And I think maybe their troubleshooting was to turn it off and turn it back on. I don't think anybody is really deeply trained in how to actually fix these audio description systems, because the majority of time, of the time, I ended up having to get passes. We didn't have that many boxes, by the way. We only had like 4, maybe 5, something like that. It wasn't like a plethora of boxes. So if too many blind people wanted to watch movies on the same day, tough. you know, it's not like we made a massive investment on audio description equipment. So, when I had to think about how would I improve, how do you improve audio description in movie theaters? The first thing that you have to do is you have to actually start by getting the actual theater companies to commit to the audio description. They have to commit to it on a level that all of their people know what to do, that there's actual training, um, because training varies from company to company in terms of what I came in contact with. I can tell you that when I was with AMC had a whole system of training. I mean, I was just training all the time. They had little classes you had to take. There were instructional videos, all these different things that you had to do. When I worked for Regal, you get sort of like an orientation, and then you just kind of get set loose. on the floor. Um, uh, Regal allotted like 10 hours worth of training that was not part of the budget, so they could hire you without it affecting the shifts of new people when they came in. Um, like Regal just sort of ate the hours a little bit. They weren't really counted in, so you weren't counted as full staff within your first 10 hours of working there, so you could do like 2 shifts and train in your training with. So if you were put on concession, you weren't immediately supposed to like hold down the fort on the concession register on your first day. um just kind of depended, but there really wasn't a deep amount of training. You just kind of picked it up as you went along. No videos, no nothing. Only class I ever attended through Regal had to do with alcohol sales. Uh, we had like employee meetings like once a year where we made everybody come and sit in a theater before we opened, and managers would go over things. But that was about it. So, yeah, there wasn't really a huge focus based on does everybody know everything that they need to know. And even when I got promoted, it wasn't like, okay, so here's all this stuff. Here's the audio description equipment. Here's how you fix it. Here's what you do. And I used to work customer service all the time, which is where you pick up the boxes. No idea. And I never really saw anybody who did have. I just saw people who kind of fiddled with it a little bit. They were like, they made it look like they were making an effort, but I don't think they actually had a cohesive idea of what they were doing, because generally they fiddled with it and they were like, no, it doesn't work. But if you don't know what it is that you're doing, it's just sort of like, what's the point? So I would say commit to the level of training to make sure that troubleshooting happens, to make sure that there's a plan in place, that somebody's in charge of making sure the audio description equipment works in all the theaters. A projectionist, if they're still running, somebody who's in the booth to make sure that the digital projectors aren't breaking, because let's face it, everything's on a digital projector nowadays. I don't think they're getting prints. They might be getting prints maybe every once in a while for something that's very specific, like when Quentin Tarantino makes a movie and talks about how his movie's on film. Nolan still likes to release movies on film, so I'm saying every once in a while they have a film that's actually probably on film. Most of these are just digital downloads, so it's just like making sure that everything runs smoothly that way and that the film loads. It's way easier. Requires a lot less skill. So if you just train that person how to actually fix the system, and also to check it at the beginning of the day to make sure it works in all of the auditoriums, that it's eligible. That's the other thing too, is if a theater chain is able to commit to audio description 100%, then we know there's no worry about. I've seen some of my friends talk about how they'll go online and they'll see that something is advertised as having audio description, yet they went to the theater and it's a title that does not have audio description. So there's sort of that false advertising. But if a chain like AMC or Regal or Cinemark, one of the major chains, made a full commitment to only showing movies that had accessibility, then both the blind and deaf communities could show up knowing that every film that was playing there would have audio description. They could make special exceptions for film festivals and say, that if we happen to be hosting a film festival in one of these major cities, that's sort of an outside event that we happen to be letting them come in, and they're sort of using our spaces. So it's possible that those films don't have audio description, because a lot of times those films are seeking distribution, and that's where the money would come in to help those films get audio description. I really loved what they did at Sundance, where they walked out on the film because it didn't have captioning for Marlee Matlin, and that's absolutely what should be happening more and more. And I mean, film festivals should be requiring accessibility. Just they're not. They have so many films that are shot on shoestring budgets that they're so worried that if they ask somebody who made a movie for $10,000 to spend any money providing audio description, that they won't have the money to do it, and that film will never get seen. I mean, I understand the negative sides of that as well, which is why I say with film festivals, that's the one place where it kind of makes sense to me, because those films lack distribution generally. There are some film festivals that are just used as, hey, check out what we're doing at the Oscars. And those film festivals, when they have distribution, it's like, come on now, put audio description on your film. You're going to have to eventually, right? So hopefully they're running audio description for those titles. We got Con is coming up, and yeah, we probably should have films, like Killers of the Flower Moon should have audio description. Indiana Jones should have audio description. These are going to be major releases. They should be films that if somebody is over there watching the film festival and needs audio description, they should be able to count on major titles like that to have audio description. So, but if the chain, if you go through NATO, which is the National Association of Theater Owners, then you can actually convince maybe some of those people to back accessibility en masse, and say, we as a chain back accessibility, and we will no longer show films that do not have this. And suddenly it forces a studio like Neon, which absolutely has the financial ability to do something like audio description, to put audio description on a film, or lose an entire market, in some cases, depending on, some towns and who has a theater in what town. So you definitely don't want to be in that situation. Sort of like Skinamarink wasn't commissioned for audio description until its VOD release, and the only way I've ever seen Skinamarink having audio description is through like digital downloads on VOD. It's not even on, for some reason, it's not even on Shudder. It's a Shudder original, but Shudder won't provide audio description for its own film, which means Shudder didn't provide audio description when it was in theatrical release, yet that movie made its budget back like 10 times over. I mean, it's such a profitable film for them based on what it was made for, what they bought it for. They very much had the money that they could have put audio description on that, and they still would have been in the green. And they just didn't. It's just laziness. A lot of this time is just laziness and apathy. And if we can fix that by forcing hands, I don't have a problem with that. That would be where I would start, is by lobbying the actual companies, the actual theater companies, to do it. Another great place would be CinemaCon, which is where the film buyers go. If anybody's ever wondered what CinemaCon is, and like, who is that for? Well, it's for film buyers. It's Hollywood is trying to entice film buyers into getting hyped about their film, getting hyped about their products, being really like, ooh, well, we got to make sure that we get so many prints. Oh, this is going to be big, so we're going to open this on this many screens at this theater. Of course, it's all kind of silly, because by the time that comes around, you're thinking about box office tracking. I guess it's more about trying to get the word out to your theaters within your chain. Make sure you put the posters up for this film. Make sure you build the standee, whatever it is. But because some of the films just sell themselves, you know, it's but it's also a great place to talk to, once again, people who have influence within the actual chains. Film buyers don't have to buy films that don't have any accessibility. If they don't have closed captioning, if they don't have audio description available, then don't buy them. It's really pretty simple. So, and if we can get to a point where we have something locked in and we have a chain that is locked in with a 100% level of commitment, to where we know when we show up there's going to be audio description and people there know how to fix it, so that way we're not wasting our time and money. Because nowadays, in an era of ride sharing, a lot of people are Ubering to movie theaters to find out that the audio description is broken and doesn't work. And I've definitely heard the conversation from some blind people who they try to have that relationship with the management in smaller towns that say, hey, I'm here, I'm a person, I'd love to be able to keep patronizing you, but you really have to make sure this equipment works, to try to humanize themselves. We shouldn't have to do that. They should just be aware of, the fact that they could have customers with low vision at any moment. It's not just you're not the one person that comes into the theater. God, I hope not. It's really hard to get an entire theater to commit to audio description if they're like, well, we've only got one blind guy in the town, so I don't know. We're gonna make $1,000 commitment to audio description for one guy. They should, but whether or not they will is an entirely different thing. But once this happens, if groups actually started trying to maybe make outings, there are a lot of, in major cities, there are these blind groups that are even social groups. They can make outings, weekly outings, where they could help fill an auditorium, and we could start creating open audio description screenings. Take a day where they're slow, like on a Wednesday, and if you can promise them that, a group that wouldn't have shown up otherwise is going to show up and buy tickets and buy concessions and go sit in a movie theater and not even have to worry about the devices, because it's just going to run open audio description in the theater. It'll just be an open AD showing that'll happen every Wednesday at 2, whatever. Just pick a day, pick a day that they're usually slow and a time they're usually slow. And if you can fill that spot and fill that need, you can start getting yourself open audio description screenings. And all you have to do is just get that spark going, that idea. And I think we can start seeing maybe a little bit more of that. It's everything else that's ever happened before, whether it's like a Mommy and Me screening. It started slow. It started with there being enough of a demand, with a group of people saying, listen, we'd like to see movies, but this is our problem. And they get scheduled a movie at a time, where it's usually slow, so that way the theater can build from that. So suddenly, when they wouldn't have business otherwise, suddenly they have business. So that's why they have their lower ticket prices days are on these weekdays, is because of stuff like that. So whether it's a Mommy and Me screening, whether it's some theater chains don't allow kids in R-rated movies after a certain time, kids under a certain age in R-rated movies after a certain time, depending on whatever individual policy they've come up with or creative, it's always been a response to the demand. And right now, I don't know that they know that they have a demand, because we just kind of give up and we go home and we watch reruns of things that we remember from yesteryear. And if we ever want to watch new things, we have to show them that we would be more committed if we knew that our rides to the theater were not going to be wasted. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, handing me passes and even refunding my stuff, what are you going to do? You're going to give me money for my Uber too? You're going to give me an Uber gift card so I can Uber my way home? I don't think so. So I'm still out the Uber. I just have passes for next time, you know? It's but next time I'm still not guaranteed that the system will work. And that's the frustrating cycle that we live in. I also talked about how, in general, back in the day, this is how it used to work with ADA guidelines. First of all, the ADA guidelines have been in since the 90s. And everybody likes to say that they know what they are, and they hold them up to the flame. Like, they're like, this is the law of the land. I can tell you that it floats around. People do what they want with this. Every theater I've worked with has had a like slightly altered policy on ADA guidelines. Before this whole thing happened, where we had this renaissance of theater going, where we ripped out all the seats and everybody started building in recliners, and now we all have assigned seating in movie theaters, to where they could control exactly where you sat and they know exactly where everybody's sitting. And now AMC is doing like tiered ticket pricing based on where you sit in the theater. You used to just come in and sit. And if you were just a regular guy and you wanted to sit in one of the handicapped row, into one of the wheelchair seats, you could, because nobody was going to kick you out. Reality of that was nobody was going to kick you out until we needed to. If a wheelchair patron showed up, which again was rare, and actually wanted to use that seating, then we would kick you out. And by the way, a lot of that it's not necessarily for the person in the wheelchair, it's for them to have a person with them. So sometimes you can get away with it if the wheelchair person is by themselves anyway, because they don't need the chair, they need the space between the chairs. So just because a wheelchair person exists doesn't even mean that those people would need to move. Now, those ADA seats, one of the reasons those work is because they don't require stairs. They have a ramp, and then you go into them, and then you park. Which means, guess what they're great for? They're great for people who don't like stairs. Now, for me, this is just for me. I don't know how many other people have thought about this. How many other blind people out there have thought about this. But for me, I don't like stairs in stadium seating. Because I always think about, like, in case of an emergency, what am I going to really be able to do? I'm not going to be able to run down the stairs like I used to be able to. I'm going to slow people down, or I'm going to get trampled or something, or I'm going to have to wait for everyone else to evacuate the theater and I'll be the last one out. And if it is a real emergency, my chances of dying increase exponentially. If I'm in a handicap row where I don't have to use stairs, my chances of survival run a lot higher. I can get out a lot quicker. I don't have to worry about the panic of everybody else as much, and being pushed over by people who are also trying to leave the theater. And I think I can get out that way. So I prefer to sit in the ADA seats. And considering I am disabled, and ADA seats, it stands for Americans with Disabilities Act. But it's funny how those seats they're not even actually for wheelchairs, because obviously if you're in a wheelchair, you have a chair. They're for companions of wheelchairs, so that way if you brought someone with you, you get one chair. I've seen these theaters have far more seats than they actually need or are legally required to provide. And yet I can't get a seat in that row. I know that there are theaters that have seats that are beyond what the ADA requirement is, because you're not required to provide a wheelchair person who has like a family of 5 with them. They don't all get to be in the ADA row through the bill. The companion seating is for one person. It's not for everyone. So I've seen groupings of seats in that row that are like 4 seats, which means there are 2 middle seats that aren't even next to a wheelchair seat. And it kind of makes me wonder why I wouldn't be able to sit there. But I've been blocked from sitting in the ADA row. My blind ass has walked up with my cane and asked for that row, and they're like, no, that's the disabled row. And I'm like, what the fuck do you think I am, dude? Oh no, we mean wheelchairs. So they'd rather let that row be vacant. You know, when back in the day, I used to have to just ask people to move. I mean, that was my job, was to go in. Before there was assigned seating, we didn't have like an usher in 20 movie theaters sitting there like policing and like holding off the wheelchair seats and being like, nobody can sit there, no one, but now that's what they're doing, because now they have assigned seatings. So and I had no problem moving people and asking them to get up and leave. And I had varying policies based on that. I believe the actual ADA guideline says that it's guaranteed up until the start time of the movie. And having worked for multiple chains, I can tell you that has been interpreted as being the advertised start time. So if we say the Avengers is at 2:30, then at 2:30, we no longer have to hold that seat for a wheelchair customer. Like, they have to be here before 2:30 and in their chair and in the seat. They have to have asked for that companion seating before the lights go down, so to speak. So that includes previews. I've also worked for a chain where they included the previews. So as long as previews were playing, we had to ask people to move. But once the movie itself started playing, so about 20 minutes in, then then you had to. Then it was just too late, and we didn't ask people to move. So, but all that is different now that you get to choose who sits where. So I wish it was a little bit different than that, because that's not how it was before. I don't think the system was drastically broken. Generally, everybody moved. Every once in a while, you have that one guy that's like, no. And you're like, really, dude? You're going to fight the wheelchair guy for his seat? Come on now. But, yeah. Anyway, that would be helpful. At least for me, I would feel less like I'm going to be trampled to death while going down the stairs. Because I have to like put my cane down in each stair as I'm going down, and feel where is the next stair, or I have to just have faith that the stair is there and just go for it, which could have resolved me falling, but it's an emergency, so who knows what I would do in that situation. But I just know that my chances of survival are higher if I'm in an ADA, bro. And it's sad that nowadays we have to think about chances of survival just when we go to a movie theater. Um, anyway, so uh, there's that. And my last suggestion would be to just simply take it out of everybody else's hands and just create a damn app. Create a damn app for our fucking phones that we can run with our own technology. It's a little bit like what Spectrum Access does, where we can just show up in a movie theater. We can have our own headphones. All we have to do is we make sure that our own shit works. It's all on us. Our phone battery has to be charged. It has to be ready to go, and we sit there with our phone battery. We put on our headphones. We load the Spectrum Access version, the same version, and we find the movie that we're watching, and we sync the audio description to that movie that we're watching. It'll just have a list of movies in theaters that are possible, that we could possibly see. And if you did this really well, you could actually limit it to, everything is GPS location based. So you could actually, somebody would have to be within a proximity of a movie theater to begin with. And then they could only select the titles that were scheduled to play that day. I guess there's an imperfect system here where it's like, well, how do you know what movie you're watching? Then your phone would have to be listening to the film. Valid. Okay, so there's that, but it also doesn't need to, because why would somebody go and watch one movie while listening to the audio description of another? Why would you select the audio description? Why would I go watch The Avengers but then select the audio description for Transformers? I'm just not gonna do that. Like, who's doing that? So and especially if it's just the audio description track alone. I know that there are some websites out there that have ripped the entire soundtrack, which includes the movie's audio track in addition to the audio description track. That's not what I'm saying. If you just have audio description only, then the only things that you would hear would be the interjection of what the narrator is having to say. So, if we just created an app and put it and gave it to us, then we wouldn't even need equipment. We'd have to have all of the film companies agreeing to this service. But this service would completely reinvent and change the game. I think that's the hardest sell. That's the hardest thing to get, but that's the answer. And honestly, that's the answer to everything. If there was just an app that collected audio description, if there was something like Bard Mobile where we even had to prove our blindness to be able to use the app, if that's what we need to do, is to somehow verify our level of blindness, to be accepted, to go through some barrier, to be able to use it, then if that makes the film companies feel better about just leaving an entire library of audio description out, then it doesn't even matter at home if a movie changes services and doesn't have it. We could have audio description for films on Tubi, on services that don't even provide it. You could just have a massive collection, a library of audio description. So it would just be up to the studios to pay to create it and then upload it to the service, and then it would just be there forever. That could be a great thing. That could totally change the landscape of audio description. Will anybody create it? Probably not. But anyway, those are my thoughts on audio description. I don't think... I don't know that we're going to be able to make leaps and bounds. I'm very pessimistic, which is why I'm here, is to constantly complain, because I think the squeaky wheel gets the grease, and if I don't keep calling people out on the lack of audio description, then what am I doing? So this is what we could be doing better. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments. What do you think we could be doing better with audio description? How do you think we could motivate companies into supporting audio description better, or film companies into providing more audio description? How do we fix this? What are your thoughts? Let me know in the comments. As always, thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. And I will see you guys on the other side.